a video on extracting the fat out of cheese. Well, Stilton in this case. So this is leftover Stilton. We're going to heat it. We're going to extract the fat out of it, and the fat they extract out of it. It's a bit like a clarified butter. I've done things with it. It is delicious, but my friend sent me a link to a video. And then I was looking at the other videos that this person had done, and they had dehydrated some Stilton and turned it into a powder. And I kind of thought that's really kind of quite interesting. That's quite similar to what I did, and the residue that was left over from getting the fat out of the Stilton. But they didn't extract the fat first. What they did was they just dehydrated the Stilton in a dehydrator. And I kind of thought, well, that's all very well, but what's going to happen in there is all the fat's going to kind of come out of it. You're going to have to soak that fat up. So we might as well try something similar. Extract the fat out of the Stilton. We can use it for something. I will think about something to use it for. And then the residue that's left over, I'm going to dry that out. And because I'm at work tomorrow, I'm going to dehydrate it, dry it out in the hot cupboard at work, which will have the same kind of effect as a dehydrator. But so, what we need to do is we fry this in a frying pan, or just heat it in a pan, and the fat starts to split out of it. So just gently, gently, gently. We notice that the fat will it's already starting to, where the bubbles are there, that's the fat. It's that already coming out. So we'll heat gently, the fat will kind of come out, we'll pour the fat off, and we'll be left with the fat and the residue from the Stilton. So that's what we're doing. It takes a little bit, kind of a slow process. We'll be back when something more interesting happens rather than just melting cheese in a pan. Although, I watch all kinds of videos online, people, and inevitably there's the pimple popping stuff that comes up, or the earwax removal kind of comes up in your random videos that YouTube and Instagram will kind of want to send you. So you end up watching even like the Hoof Doctor, which is he's a Scottish person. I don't know if he's a doctor. Well, I don't know if you have to qualify to be a doctor, but he goes on and like gives cows pedicures that have got like broken hooves and things like that. So you end up watching those type of videos. So there probably is a market for videos of cheese just melting in a pan. So do I really want to show you cheese melting in a pan? Because it might become some kind of viral hit. No, there will be someone already online showing you cheese just melting in a pan. But anyway, we're back when something more interesting is happening. So, as you can see here, the fat has split out of the cheese and it's come to the top. There, you can see it all there. There's a little bit of sediment underneath, but that's to be expected. So we'll just start to scoop off some of this fat and then cook it some more. How can I do this without making too much of a mess? So I should just be able to pour it. So we'll pour off that, and then we'll carry on cooking. I should have put it into a glass jar, shouldn't I? Not to worry. We'll just have to heat that gently at a later stage. But it's not the fat that I'm interested in at the moment, it's the residue that's left, which we're going to dry out. So, but you can see what's happening there, like that. We'll carry on cooking that, get some more fat out of it, and then kind of left with the residue. Do you know, it tastes wonderful. I'm not going to lie. That fat is delicious, and I made it into some butter, and it's absolutely delicious. There's a video, you'll find it. It's in the butter, yogurt, and cheese section. But we'll just carry on cooking that to get more fat out of it. Drive out moisture as well, which will help it dry out, and then we'll be able to turn it into a powder, and then goodness only knows what I'll do with it. But I'm only really interested to see if it actually works, rather than actually what I'm going to do with it. So I think we've got about just as much fat out of it this way as we possibly can. So let's gingerly scoop out that fat into the container. Are we going to? No, we'll do it that way. I think it's going to be easiest to get the solid bit out of the pan first, onto a bit of baking parchment. Spread that out, and the thinner we spread it out, the quicker it will dry. So do that around. Hide my dirty cooker, and then the fat goes in there. It's already started to separate, so I'll do something else with that. I did have an idea to do some fondant potatoes. I kind of thought that would give the fondant potatoes just this delicious umami kind of quite flavour to it. But then I want to do a savoury cake, not like a cornbread, but like a cake with eggs, but savoury. But I'm just playing the idea with it around in my head at the moment. I just kind of think there's something there. I think cornbread's a little bit, I'm sorry, but a bit tasteless. Maybe I just haven't had good cornbread, but I think we could do something. I just need to think of a way to replace the sugar in the in the cake, which I suppose one we could do with. Don't want it sweet though, but it needs to be something to replace the sugar. So that'll go hard, and we'll put it in the hot cupboard at work tomorrow to dry out, and then we'll turn it into a powder, and then we can think of things we can do with it. And you'll see here that there's a bit of froth on top, but you can see the clarified bit underneath, and there's some gunk underneath that, but that's fine. So we'll let that go solid now, but get the fat out of that. That foam tastes absolutely delicious. But anyway, back when that's drying. Right, so this is drying out, but we're getting fat coming out of it, so I think I'm going to have to put some kitchen paper underneath it just to blot up that fat, and then it will dry out more. Once we've kind of pulled the fat out of it, it will dry. But it's going crispy, like a Parmesan tuile type of thing. How's it taste? Stiltony, salty, chewy. It's quite nice. But anyway, so I'll put some paper underneath it just to blot out some of the fat, and we'll carry on drying it. So we've dried it out and we've turned it into a powder. Now, so what did I put it on? Did I put it on some grease with paper, or did I put it on some cling film? It's grease with paper. I think it was grease baking parchment. Couldn't say grease proof paper then. So to start off with, and we found that some fat came out of it and it wasn't drying out just entirely much, so I put it on some paper. You certainly need to do that. But I wouldn't recommend putting on paper to start off with. I recommend baking parchment first, and then when it dries out and forms into a sheet, and then I put it on some paper to kind of soak up that excess fat that comes out of it. And then you just carry on baking it low heat, about 75 degrees, something like that, and eventually it goes crisp. Now, it only goes crisp when it cools down, but as you can see, that's nice and crisp, isn't it? And then we've put it in the spice grinder and we've turned it into a powder. How does the powder taste? You can stick your finger. Not as strong as you'd think. Not as strong as you'd think, actually, but it is a nice seasoning. You know, if you were to toss it on some chips at the end as like a bit of a sprinkle, that'd be nice. Or you could add it to things like cream cheese, those type of things. You could stir it into a soup, like sautéed potatoes, kind of right at the very end, kind of like as you toss them in the butter. You could sprinkle some of that into the seasoning. It's very nice. And I suppose if I had a legitimate use for it and the butter that comes out of the Stilton, then that's what I'd be doing with all the spare bits of Stilton that I've got. But just more of an interesting experiment. But I think you do need to. It speeds up the process if you fry it in a frying pan to extract the fat first. Otherwise, you're going to be using a lot of cloth or napkins, paper towels, to get rid of the excess fat. And if there was any fat left in there, that would want to turn into a dried paste rather than a powder. But there we go, an interesting experiment. All the same, I will find I'll thingamajig it all down. I mean, you could actually serve that as Stilton crisps, couldn't you? Stick it in something. Well, we used to do it with Parmesan in the 90s, but you could do it with that. There's a bit of a garnish. I'll do it in shards. That'd be nice. So when it was still hot, just before it cooled. You know, once you drained all the fat out of it, once you got to this stage, pulled it straight out of the oven or the hot covered with the dehydrator. Cut it into shards, and then let it cool, and it'd go crisp, and they'd be delicious. Salty kind of bar snack type of thing. But anyway, interesting experiment and a success.